Greetings, YouTube viewers. Welcome back to our season. Today we have moved on from week 1 of season 1, so now we're going on to week 2. We're gonna take a look and see what we got going on. Okay, we're gonna take a look at what the schedule looks like for this week. See the highlight games. See if there's any other games of note to mention. We'll go ahead and sim those through after we take a look. Florida, Miami, that's a big one. That's a fun one. You got a rivalry game. First of the 3 games to decide the state champion of Florida. So that'll be a good one. I'll go ahead and simulate that in a minute to show you the score. BYU, Wisconsin. I mean, if I remember right, to pass, BYU actually did win that game. So that'll be interesting to see how it looks on this game. Florida State, Alabama, that's a big one. Surprised that's not the game of the week, honestly. 1 versus 2. Michigan, North Carolina, Auburn, LSU, that's the game of the week. I mean, although that is a big game, it's still interesting that Florida State, Alabama wasn't the game of the week, but we'll take it, I guess. Kansas State, Texas, if we were looking today, I mean, it's still a top 25 matchup, so that's a big game. Okay, so that's what the schedule looks like. I'm gonna go through and simulate some of these, and then after it's over, I'll go back through and we'll just take a look and see who won those games. So the first game that I simulated, as you can see here, was the University of Florida against Miami. As you see, Florida pulled off the win there, winning 31-6. Not as close as I thought it would be. The next game that I simulated, and I simulated it mostly just because I mentioned it, that BYU actually ended up winning in real life back in 2014, but they pulled it off again. BYU knocks off number 13 Wisconsin 27-24 in overtime. History repeats itself, I guess. Here we got what I would deem the game of the week, number 1 Florida State versus number 2 Alabama. But here we got Florida State knocking off Alabama 30-24. Here we got another game that could be considered a big game, especially if we were going by today's standards. We got Michigan versus North Carolina. North Carolina ranked number 23 at the time. Michigan takes care of them 45-24. Next up, we got what the game considered to be the game of the week. We had number 5 Auburn against number 21 LSU. LSU pulls the upset, knocking off the Auburn Tigers 16-14. As you can see here, looks like we've got Nick Marshall as the quarterback of Auburn at this time. So that's how far back we're going here. So far we've got some good games. Got a couple of upsets. Looking to be exciting. I'm going to go ahead and simulate the rest of the week, and we'll come back and we'll take a look at the updated rankings and other things like that after week 2. Okay, so we've simulated to the end of week 2. All games been played. Now we're going to go ahead and take a look at the top 25 polls. Florida State remains at number 1. They beat Alabama, so everything shifts. So now Oklahoma's at number 2. Oregon is at number 3. Ohio State jumps up a couple spots to number 4. Same with UCLA, number 5. Michigan State. Alabama drops to number 7. It's not a bad drop with a loss. Obviously, losing to number 1, not going to drop that far. Georgia, Baylor, and Stanford wrap out the top 10. 11-20, we got Auburn. They dropped 6 spots from 5 to 11 after their loss to LSU. Clemson climbs a couple spots. Notre Dame, South Carolina dropped after they got blown out by Georgia. LSU climbs up after they got their win against Auburn. Texas A&M climbs. Nebraska climbs. BYU jumps up into the top 20 at number 18 after their win over Wisconsin. Wisconsin drops right behind them, and then you got Arizona State at number 20. Finishing off the top 25, you got Texas climbing up again. TCU at 22, and then joining the top 25 this week, we got Washington, Florida, and Michigan. Others coming in who were just outside, you got Kansas State, Oklahoma State, Ole Miss, and Missouri, and USC are climbing up. Next up, we're going to take a look at the Heisman Watch, see if there's any changes here. Not many changes. Looks like the quarterback for Alabama, who was the preseason watch list, got replaced because the real quarterback, he's climbed up in. Everyone else remains the same. I guess I might need to go through and look at some of the rosters and depth charts of some of these teams to see what's going on there. So I did go ahead and pull up the depth chart and roster for Alabama. like I said, the name that was on there when it began, I had no clue who it was. Here, so now it looks like their quarterback room is Jake Coker, Blake Sims, and Cooper Bateman. For the running backs, you got T.J. Yeldon, Derrick Henry, Kenyon Drake, Alti Tenpenny. Not even familiar with those people, or some of them. Not the last couple I wasn't too familiar with. Amari Cooper, definitely familiar with him. Not familiar with the rest of them though. Not sure what's going on there. O.J. Howard, heard of. I am familiar with that name. Ragland. I'm not an Alabama fan, so I'm really not familiar with most of these people, but let me know if this seems accurate or if it's way off. I'm kind of seeing a lot of 80s. I did go ahead and look up Florida State's roster as well, just because they're the number one ranked team, so I wanted to see why they were ranked number one. We got Jameis Winston, so this is his year. That kind of makes sense why they're that high now. Got Carlos Williams, Dalvin Cook. Sorry, offensive line. I played offensive line when I was in high school. When I was young, I wasn't any good, but I played offensive line, so I understand you don't usually get a lot of attention. But yeah, I'm not really familiar with many of these people here, so please don't hate me. Don't leave any hate. I'm just Jalen Ramsey. Didn't he play for Florida? I may be completely wrong, but so not sure what's going on. Okay, so that wraps up week 2. Some more upsets. Some teams that are typically in the top 25 are starting to move up, and we're seeing some movement already. We should be getting into some conference play now, so we may check the conference standings every so often just to give a little bit of a interesting look. And if there are changes at number 1, I'll take a look at the roster there, see who's on that roster. But for the most part, we're just going to continue on going through. Thanks again for being here. Go ahead, if you thought this was interesting, and if you think this experiment is interesting, give me a like, hit the subscribe button. In the comments, tell me your favorite all-time college player so that we can add them to the recruiting list for the start of the next season. All right, appreciate you being here. Have a great day, everyone.